Many people ask me, Gene, how exactly did you get into the DevOps movement? And the answer I usually give is, well, it was just a natural continuation of my 21-year journey studying high-performing technology organizations, which drew me to the center of the DevOps movement, which I think is urgent and important. But if you kept asking me, well, how exactly did you stumble into the DevOps movement, eventually you would hear me say, in 2010, when I was at Tripwire, I got this email out of the blue from someone I had never heard of, inviting me to be on a panel at an event I'd never heard of. So I went to it, and I was blown away by what I saw. And there I met this amazing group of mavericks that were at the epicenter of the DevOps movement, including John Allspaw, who you heard from yesterday, John Willis, Patrick Dubois, Andrew Schaefer, and so many more. That event was DevOps Days 2010, the first DevOps Days in the US, created by Patrick Dubois. The person who emailed me, it was Damon Edwards, who was one of the conference organizers along with John Willis. So over the years, Damon has been one of my favorite people to collaborate with. He's been a part of the program committee from the very beginning, and he helps shape all of the next generation ops and infrastructure programming talks. Damon will talk about the gap that still remains for operations, despite SRE, despite platforms, deployment automation, and the technology du jour. Damon is a co-founder of Rundeck, and so congratulations to Damon and team for their recent acquisition by PagerDuty. Here's Damon.
Thanks, Gene. I appreciate the kind words. It's great to be here today, even in this virtual Las Vegas in these unprecedented times. It's going to be great next year to be able to see all you again in person. As Gene said, my name is Damon Edwards. You might know me from my work at Rundeck, where I was one of the co-founders. But as of a couple weeks ago, big news, we're now part of PagerDuty. So Rundeck has been acquired by PagerDuty. It's great to be joining forces. But enough about me. Let's get started. So who knows what this is, right? Up, down, left, right, BA, start, right? I think if you played video games in the late 80s or early 90s, your thumbs might have been twitching when I said that. Of course, this is the famous Konami cheat codes, right? So a whole lot of games, this unlocked extra lives or extra power-ups or slowed things down or sped things up. A variety of things were based on this system that you were playing, but it would, give you an advantage, right? That's what these cheat codes are. They're unlocks. It unlocks capabilities. It makes it easier to overcome the obstacles in the system with which you're playing, kind of moving towards whatever the goal or the quest is for that video game. So you might be asking, well, what's this got to do with the DevOps conference, right? And, I've started thinking recently about, that as our world's changed around us, what is it about these events, right? What brings us here? And of course, there's the fellowship and the camaraderie and often the commiseration, right? But I think there's more to it. And at the base of it, I believe it's about these cheat codes. It's about these unlocks, right? The design patterns, the principles, the techniques that we could learn from each other, and then go back and apply it to the systems in which we work in to help ourselves and our colleagues and our companies, overcome the obstacles, make the obstacles a little lower, the barriers a little further away, and improve our overall performance. So I started to think about these like cheat codes. Start to think about, well, what's the next unlock, right? What are the next areas that we can really focus on to unlock the most value? And for me, I think one of the thesis here of my talk is that the next great unlocks are going to come from operations, right? And I really think that if you think about operations activity, not just what happens in the four walls of the operations organization, but operations activity wherever it may lay, there's really kind of two main parts to it, right? That are distinctly, I think, operations. One is incident management, spotting and resolving problems, right? And the other is service requests, right? How do we, take the business requests or requests from our colleagues and handle them as quickly as possible? Now, I want to really kind of focus in on incident management because I think that's where really the rubber meets the road in terms of, the capabilities of an operations organization, the ability to spot and resolve problems as quickly as possible. And, what do we all want out of our incident management, right? I think this hasn't really changed for decades, right? We want shorter incidents. We want to be able to solve these problems for our customers or for our users as fast as possible. But we also want to do it with as little disruption to the rest of the organization, right? So shorter incidents, fewer escalations is what we're after. But what's always gotten in the way, right? And I think we've learned now that what gets in the way really is complexity, right? And, and I don't mean complicated, right? I'll be clear about that. Like a car engine is complicated, but really it's complexity, right? It's the randomness and the unpredictability of something like, say, traffic in a city, right? And it's really, as our systems have become more complex, it's been understanding that, it's really dealing with that complexity that has really got in the way and all along has prevented us from, having the shorter incidents and the fewer escalations that we've always wanted. And, it was really, J. Paul Reed and John Allspot, two folks who in our industry who have done a great job of bringing kind of the broader world of, safety sciences and really understanding, complex systems and why problems happen and often don't happen, and really kind of translate it into our domain. And, been lucky to, work with them over the past few years in the community sense. And, really they've kind of beaten into my head this idea that, hey, our world is complex and it's not deterministic. And often it's that difference in that viewpoint that, our is what we do a deterministic, predictable thing, or are we living in kind of the randomness and unpredictability of complex systems? It's those two beliefs, those two viewpoints that often kind of are at the root of the conflict of these DevOps conflicts that we've all been experiencing and have been gathering to try to solve. Now, just to kind of lay out a little more clearly what I'm talking about, think about the world from the point of view of from the development side of the house, right? That things, it's much more of it. You're kind of trained to think in a much more deterministic point of view, right? So, you write some code, it either builds or it doesn't, it either runs or it doesn't, right? It's a very binary activity. There's inputs, there's outputs. If something goes wrong along the way, you can put your finger on exactly what it was, right? Now, as we start to think in more distributed systems, we start to carry that same, deterministic point of view that, it's a broader collection of these deterministic pieces, and we can predict the inputs and the outputs.